Everybody. My name is Kirsten van der Ham. I'm honored to be here today. I will talk a little bit about my thesis on autism spectrum condition in entrepreneurship. I did my master strategic entrepreneurship at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam for this. First, I will get into a little bit why I did this research. Then I will focus on the problem, the question, who I talk to, autism-related strengths in entrepreneurship, the challenges faced by autistic entrepreneurs, a comparison, what makes it work with the person-environment fit theory, why this matters, and eventually what now. Oh. Okay, so I was uniquely tooled to invent something by simply combining what I had learned through my career with just one of my many quirky obsessive hobbies of my unusual mind. Before anyone else had even imagined such a marginal idea, I had created the first equal loyalty rewards point program on the planet. This is a quote by an inspiring entrepreneur, Andreas Sovaliotis, who has autism. And I chose this quote because I can really relate to it myself. As someone who is neurodivergent, I feel like I have a lot of potential. However, I don't feel like there's always a lot of space for me in society. So that's why I decided to study my master's strategic entrepreneurship, because I felt like it would give me the opportunity to kind of create my own space a little bit. And this is one of the main subjects of what I researched in my thesis. Autistic individuals are significantly underrepresented in the workforce. Around 85% don't have a full-time job, and nearly half of those who do are overqualified. This lack of fit between the individual and the traditional workspace often leads to lower well-being, less financial security, and less access to social networks. Entrepreneurship, however, could offer much better fit for many autistic people because of the autonomy, flexibility, and the chance to create environments that match their strengths. And we do have great examples of autistic entrepreneurs out there, but strangely, there's barely any research on how entrepreneurship and autism actually fit together. There's been plenty of work on ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression, and other DSM-5 conditions in entrepreneurship research, but almost nothing on autism. Why? I think personally it could be because of an ongoing stigma, because autism is still rarely associated with innovation, leadership, or entrepreneurship in general. And that's exactly why this matters. Both scientifically and socially, we're missing critical voices, perspectives, and possibilities. The central question that guided my research is, how do individuals with autism spectrum condition turn their strengths into opportunities and manage their challenges within entrepreneurship? I wanted to explore this more from their own perspective, not just how a society sees autism, but how autistic entrepreneurs themselves experience their journey. So I set out to understand what are the unique strengths that autistic entrepreneurs bring, what are the challenges they face, and most importantly, how do they make it work? So that's what this research is really about, understanding and amplifying neurodivergent voices in entrepreneurship. To explore this question, I interviewed 10 participants with Dutch nationalities. They came from very different industries, some in creative fields like photography and writing, and a few had backgrounds in consulting or business. Some had just started their business, while others had over 20 years of experience. I also included autism and business coaches to add an outsider perspective on what they observe in the field. And I aimed for a mix of gender identities, but ended up with more women. Although most participants were self-employed, the variety of paths gave me a rich understanding of how autism shows up in entrepreneurship. The autistic entrepreneurs I spoke with described some incredible strengths that helped them not only survive, but also thrive in business. For example, one of the participants leveraged their strong pattern recognition skills to achieve hyper efficiency in text redaction. So he secured an opportunity to work for the government due to this skill, providing crucial last-minute text checks, often receiving documents late at night and delivering them by morning. So he was able to leverage his deep focus and persistence, and he created a very unique value proposition. My second example is a participant who initially had a hyper interest in marketing as a consultant, but developed a new hyper interest in anti-racism education. She hereby recognized a business opportunity for educating people and was able to combine her two hyper interests. She was very good at reading academic text and identified a particular metric, for example, that was used for the examinations of Black people, but it ended up being inaccurate because it originated from outdated research conducted on a very specific group. She is also able to interpret these texts, explain them, and translate them for professionals in specific industries. Additionally, she leveraged her marketing expertise and pattern recognition skills to understand the algorithm and create a highly successful social media platform with a big following that she uses for networking opportunities. For my last example, I recognize that certain autism traits, or specifically autism needs, led to both an increase in experimentation and implementation, as well as clear structured goals. So one of my participants was very direct, and he didn't like a lot of talking extensively about specific issues. He was very much focused on trying stuff out and then implementing the successful ones, which is very, very similar to a familiar term in business, the minimal viable product. So his need for directness actually led to more experimentation and implementation. Another participant had a need for structure and overview, so as soon as things strayed away from the general red line, they called for a meeting to reconsider specific goals and evaluate, which is also very beneficial for the business process. Alongside the strengths, there are also many important challenges. And funnily enough, while networking and communication were strengths for some of the entrepreneurs, it was also a major challenge because of communication disconnects, especially like the double empathy problem arose, where autistic and non-autistic people struggle to understand each other's communication styles. And another big challenge was sensory overload, like things like loud noises, bright lights, crowded environments could even make like seemingly basic business activities very difficult. Several participants mentioned masking and trying to hide their traits to fit in with neurotypical expectations, but over time, this led to burnout. Access to resources was also a problem, sometimes because of systemic barriers and other times because they simply didn't know what was available. These challenges don't make entrepreneurship impossible, but they do require different forms of support and understanding. And many autistic entrepreneurs develop smart, proactive strategies to make entrepreneurship work for them. So one key approach was structuring their work environment to match their sensory needs. This could mean working in quiet spaces, using noise-canceling headphones, or taking breaks. And they often built strong routines, which gave them predictability and reduced stress. Several prefer to use written communication or emails or messaging over face-to-face meetings or phone calls, which allows for more clarity and processing time. And coaching was also mentioned as a crucial form of external support. Finally, one of the most powerful strategies was selective engagement, choosing projects and collaborators and work rhythms that respected their boundaries and energy levels. In other words, they crafted businesses that fit them rather than forcing themselves to fit in a certain mold. Now, onto a comparison between the strongest and the weakest fits in the specific cases. In the weaker fits, I found that they experienced a lack of or non-sufficient strategies, a negative impact on their mental health, and a lack of resources in total. Some strategies included simply only masking their traits, which led to miscommunication. And I also noticed that some of the business owners were very young and they were still very much in the learning process, so they hadn't found their optimal strategies. And this led to a lot of frustration. And there was also, in some cases, a direct interplay between depression and autism-related needs not being met. The conservation of resources theory posits that resource loss is a central component in the stress process, which made sense as one of the factors that was causing stress in these cases. The strongest cases both really utilize the flexibility of entrepreneurship to mitigate the challenges of sensory stimuli and also to create very structured environments, which was very beneficial. Furthermore, they use their strong systemizing abilities to leverage their skills and strengths effectively, which support the hyper-systemizing theory. And they were both very experienced. They had like over 20 years, owned their business, and they really optimized their coping strategies over this time, which suggests that coping skills can be taught. So what actually determines whether entrepreneurship is a good path for someone with autism spectrum condition? In my research, I applied the person-environment fit model, which focuses on how well someone's traits and needs align with their work environment. This model encompasses two dimensions. The needs and resources fit, does the work environment meet your sensory, social, or structural needs? And the demands abilities fit. Can you meet the expectations and demands of the job with your skills and strengths? For many autistic entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship offers a better chance of that alignment because they can build around their needs using their strengths and minimize friction. When the fit is good, we see higher autonomy, well-being, and performance. But when it's poor, when expectations clash with needs, or when masking is required, we see stress, burnout, and even business failure. So success isn't just about traits; it's also very much about like the fit, and that's something we can design for. This research eventually adds to the person-environment theory, suggesting that entrepreneurial context offers possibilities to create an environment that aligns with the person. So why does this all matter beyond just like the academic world? First, it challenges stereotypes. Entrepreneurship is often portrayed as like a fast-paced, high social risk heavy, and those traits are not usually associated with autism. But this research shows a much more nuanced picture. It shows the value of autistic ways of thinking, systemic analysis, niche expertise, or deep focus. And these aren't just like side notes, they're actually like assets. And this work adds artistic voices to entrepreneurship literature, which has often been overlooked. Most studies talk about autistic people, but this one actually talks with them. It supports a wider shift from deficit-based to a strength-based perspective. And finally, this research encourages us to redesign systems in business, education, and policy so they fit more minds and not fewer. Because when environments are more inclusive, everybody benefits. I want to end with a few takeaways that are very concrete measures for moving forward. For researchers and professionals, I think the most important thing is include autistic voices in your work. Stop studying autism only through a lens of dysfunction and stop assuming autistic people only belong in tech or behind a screen. Specifically, continuing on my research, like use a little bit more diverse samples, different cultures, markets, and also look at the failed entrepreneur side. Focus on longitudinal studies, impact of specific traits, comparison to neurotypical entrepreneurs, and research in startup teams, and observational studies. And then for educators and organizations, support inclusive and flexible design. Tools like coaching, quiet zones, energy management, they aren't just luxuries, they're the future of inclusive work. And really make sure you focus on leveraging strengths. And for people with autism, you don't have to force yourself into a system that isn't made for you. You have the power and the right to build systems that fit for you, and your strengths are not just side notes, they are core drivers of value. So in short, let's move on from fixing people to fixing systems. And I want to end with the quote, let's create space for all neurotypes. Thank you for listening and for being part of a conversation that I believe is essential, not only just for autistic people, but for all of us. And I hope that this work sparks more research and more support and more space for autistic entrepreneurs and neurodivergent people in general to shape the world in a way that works for them. I just finished my studies and I hope to work on creating inclusive working environments. So I found it very inspiring, like the few people before me. If you want to connect, collaborate, or continue the conversation, I'm happy to chat now during the Q&A or afterwards. Okay, I cannot really see everybody right now. So let me know if you have a question.
I think I do have a question.
Mhm.
The people who you have worked with, your participants,
Mhm.
what kind of age range were they?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say from about like 30 to 60, like pretty
Okay.
broad. But like, yeah, definitely a difference between like the young people and the more experienced people.
Mm-hmm. Because you mentioned obviously you have a bit older people and a bit younger people.
Mhm.
Would you give them different advices based on their experience?
Yeah, I would say like for the younger people, like listen to the older people, because I've really noticed like all the young people that are trying to fit their strategies. I wish they would kind of like read my thesis and see like, look at these strategies, like try them out. And then for the older people, I'm not saying that everything is like perfect, and of course everything is still nuanced, but I feel like they had very like structured coping strategies in place. So thank you for the question.
There is a question in the chat. Sorry, my voice is suddenly going. There's a question in the chat. At what age did the participants receive diagnosis?
That's really interesting because all very late. So that was one of the interesting observations that then there was also a big change like after they received the diagnosis, like for some cases it was like after like a burnout, and then they were like, oh wait a minute, like I can actually set boundaries, and that really changed for some of the participants. Yeah.
Um, Sorry, I just lost my questions. When you were doing your research, what was the challenge for you personally?
Mm. Yeah, for me, with my neurodivergence, I tend to like do very big, like deep dives into everything. So I think I ended up with like 150 pages of like transcripts that I had to like code and everything. So I think I did a total of 8 months for my research, which is 2 months extra. Um, so I think, but I even like myself developed new like coping techniques for that. I think I did a lot of like speech to text with like software, just speaking everything and then marking everything and structuring it. And that really helped to survive kind of like my thesis.
Okay, interesting. And with your neurodivergence, what were your strengths during your research?
Also, very good question. Yeah, I think for me, like the coding process itself was kind of like really easy. Like writing about it was hard. So for me, like, yes, was a lot of like scripts, but I think I made like a big like mind map and overview to structure everything for myself. So I'd say, and I think in general, just like me being like almost like the first person to cover this, I think that's a very good aspect to just look at things a different way and be like, hey guys, why are we researching this?
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned wanting to help create a more inclusive workspace. Is there a specific topic you want to research or a specific thing you want to create? What is your focus within that?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of like electives, like focusing on like change management or even like influence and persuasion. Like, how do you convince actually like a business to do this? And my background is industrial design engineering, so I have very much like a designer mindset set, and I really want to like redesign the workspace, like both like physically and mentally, to be more inclusive, because I feel, I don't know, I think it's kind of like a waste of everyone's time that we're not already doing this. So but I just like finished like Monday my last deadline for everything, so now I have to find like a job and everything. So yeah, but that's where I want to go eventually.
Okay, interesting. Um, I think maybe I could be wrong. Maybe May's research, what she just talked about, could be interesting. Maybe
Mhm.
to collab on that part.
Mhm.
I don't know. Were you here during Steven's presentation?
Yes, I came on like a little bit before Stephen. So I also really loved his presentation. I was like, whoa, oh my God, like all these sheets, I want to like look at them and see what they're all about. And I would love to sit together with just all the people that are relevant. And then I know there's not a lot of like consultants that exist for like neuro inclusive workspaces, but there are a lot of like consultants focused on like inclusivity when it comes to like sexism and racism. So I talked to some of those people and they were very like open to working together as well. So I kind of want to put everyone together at the table and then have a conversation.
Yeah, interesting. Because um, you yourself, you're neurodivergent. Um, what kind of challenges do you personally think that are still like stigmatized or a problem in a workspace that you think like maybe we could change that?
Yeah, so far I've mostly experienced not like a 9 to 5 job so far, but in education environments, I really noticed that it hasn't improved over the last like 20 years, like the tools and like the stuff. Especially I have like also like an auditory processing disorder, so any lecture is kind of shitty for me. So, but there's nothing kind of to help me. And then if I need help, I need to send every like professor an email beforehand, which is a lot of work. So, in a working environment, I think that what I'm bad at is like writing, but what I'm good at is like researching.
Hmm.
So that's why I also think like initially I wanted to do research in teams and collaborations. So I feel like I would need an environment where you kind of like really play on each other's strengths. And I think I get very much easily like sensory overloaded. So I would need like a flexible workspace where I can work from home. Um, yeah, that's I think what I know right now.
Okay, interesting.
I love that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Even you are muted, by the way. I think you're talking.
Sorry. Would mind mapping be any help to
I've heard.
structure your thoughts? If you're good at researching and you just
Mhm.
stick words on pieces of paper, post-its, and see how the links are, and you may change them every minute. Since the
Mhm.
context may also change, then
Yeah.
you shape sort of the meaning and the significance,
Mhm.
um, which enables you to write it down. And my hypothesis, so without any research, is that you immediately see so many layers in what you hear that you're blocked before writing them down.
Mhm.
So before you can't write down all the layers at once, but if you see these hints that you write down, which you can put in any order you like, you can write, you can elaborate, you can write down all the each layer one by one after the presentation if you take the time.
Mhm. Yeah, I do. I love working with like mind maps. So I think that's very good advice. I also put like my entire literature review in a big mind map, and now I have my all my ideas for like inclusive work environments also in a big mind map. So, but it's a good idea to also do it like in general in my personal life and my own thoughts, like during notes and everything. So thank you.
Well, I know a professor who lives in Spain, and she has one wall that she emptied of anything. And when she's doing her research, she puts it full of paper and post-its and markers and anything she can use just to help her structuring her thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Just visual. I need everything visual, so I think that's very nice.
Um, since you did your research on autism, you mentioned the other neurotypes.
Mhm.
If you look at the mainstream neurotypical person and what they generally need, there's a lot of literature on how to do business for decades or maybe centuries. If you look at each symptom of neurodiversity, every spike, which goes beyond the average, um, then perhaps you could see what does this do, what are the pros, what are the advantages, and what are the challenges. And if you find an advantage which it may suit within their own business, but perhaps it doesn't, but it's still an advantage, then it may suit into someone else's business who has a deficit.
Mhm.
If you use the SWOT model, you could link, for example, my weaknesses to your opportunities, and my strength to your threats.
It's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, because my research question was based on the SWOT model, but I kind of, because I wanted to have like a strength-based perspective, I didn't call it like weaknesses, but I called it challenges. And then opportunities is still the same, but threats is more strategies, because I felt like it was more relevant in real life context for actual people. But I've never looked at it that way. But that's a very smart and interesting like connection. Like you can fill it in together.
That's a cooperative model,
Yeah.
which may also challenge you to find more neurotypes and see how people with autism and ADHD, for example, could work together just because of their differences.
Exactly. I'd love to, like, especially just like, I think the biggest, like, I think a very good team would be like someone with like autism or ADHD and both, and then maybe also neurotypical, and just mix everything together. But I wanted to do this research in teams, but it was really hard to find like specific teams that were able to like collaborate with me on the research. And then I also think this is something that's very like relevant for an inclusive work environment, just like the knowledge if for how to work together. And then yeah, I think it would be very interesting subject.